What's up guys, it's Osiris. Welcome to a brand new video. I hope you guys are doing well. And yeah, let's get right into this. This is the second video in our sampling in FL Studio series. And today we'll be taking a look at the sampler. So the sampler is the default plugin you see when you load up FL Studio, and we'll be checking out how we can use this to flip samples to create interesting beats. So you can load up the sampler in two different ways, as an instrument track and as an audio track. So let's check out different ways you can load up the sampler in FL Studio, and I'm going to show you the difference between the sampler being an audio track and the sampler being an instrument track. So if you take a sample from your browser here, I'm using the Jazz Hop kit. I'll put a link to this kit in the description below from LoopCloud. And let's just take a drum loop, for example. Let me turn the volume up. So there are different ways you can load up things in FL Studio. You can load things to the channel rack, and you can load things to the playlist. If you load up a sample into the playlist, you load up sampler as an audio track. And if you load up a sample into the channel rack, you load it up as an instrument track. So the difference between the sampler as an audio track and the sampler as an instrument track is that the instrument track version can be used as an instrument plugin. So you have to play MIDI notes to work with this. And if you just take a look at the top menu here, you can see you have just two controls here, and you have three options here. So you just have the sample settings and the miscellaneous settings on the audio track version of sampler, and you have sample settings, instrument settings, and miscellaneous settings on the instrument version of sampler. So in the new FL Studio, we load up things in a different way. So FL Studio gave the options to load things directly in the track list in the playlist. So you can load a sample here and choose how you want to load it up. So you can choose audio clips, audio tracks, or instrument tracks. So audio clips and audio tracks is the same thing. It's just that audio track will assign that sample directly to a mixer track automatically, and instrument track will load up the sampler as an instrument track. So let's try this out. So if we load up audio track, we get the sampler loaded up as audio, and if we load up something directly on the track as an instrument track, we get this loaded up as the sampler loaded up as an instrument. So these are the two different ways the sampler will appear for you in FL Studio, and I just want you to take note of this. So what we'll be using the sampler for in this series, we'll mostly be using the sampler as an audio track, not an instrument track. We can do some things using the sampler as an instrument track, but for now we'll just see what we can do with the sampler as an audio track. So let me load up an MC project here, and let's try some things out. So I can load this into the playlist as an audio track, and let's see some things we can do with this. Let's flip this drum loop. Let's edit the drum loop, and let's make some interesting things with this. So the first thing we'll look at is how to choose where a sample starts from and how to choose where a sample ends. We use these two controls to do that. So if you move this button up, you can decide to choose where the sample starts from. I'm just going to play this in the playlist so you can see this happening live. So I'm just going to make my sample start from this position here. Then you can choose the sample end with this knob here. So we've been able to choose a start time and an end time for our sample. So this is an option you'll be using a lot when working in the sampler. And the next two options is the in and the out. So these are just like crossfades. So you can fade the sample in. You can fade the sample in and you can fade the sample out. Then you can do a crossfade also. So you see the nice So you see how we are changing up these drums with just this option here. And with trim, we can just remove the silence in the sample. But I'm not going to do that because I want the sample to play through till the end of the bar. So with the crossfade, we've been able to make I use this a lot on drums, and we've been able to make a completely different drum pattern. Let's look at other things in this tab, like the reverse. So you can reverse the sample. You can swap stereo. This changes the right stereo to the left stereo if you have a stereo track. You can also fade stereo. And this just fades the track from your left ear to your right ear. And if you swap the stereo, it fades the track from your right ear to your left ear. So you can normalize and make everything at 0 dB. And you can use the reverse polarity button to flip the sample vertically. You have some other options in pre-computed effects. You can boost, you can do some EQ things, you can put in reverb, you can put in a stereo delay. Then you can put in a pogo effect. But let's stick with these options here. I just want to show you that there are more options available here. So the next tab we want to take a look at is the time stretching tab. And what time stretching does is stretch the time of your sample according to time and pitch. So you can use this to manipulate the time and pitch of your sample. So we have just 4 main modes you are going to be using: resample, stretch, stretch pro, and auto. So these are the 4 modes I want you to stick to. There are different other modes, but these are the 4 modes you are going to be using the most. So the default mode is resample, and let's check this out. So we can change the time of the sample. So in the resample mode, if you increase the time, the pitch of the sample will decrease. If you try to change the pitch, it's going to switch the mode from resample to auto. So you see how resample, the resample mode and auto mode sounds different. So the auto chooses a suitable sample mode for that particular sample. So just remember that time changes the length of the sample and pitch changes the pitch of the sample. So the next mode we'll look at is the stretch mode. If you put the sample on stretch mode, the pitch will remain the same if you change the time. So let's change the time. So unlike the resample mode where the pitch changes when you change the time, on stretch mode, the pitch remains the same. And you can just use this time multiplicator to increase the time change. Now let's take a look at the Stretch Pro mode. So this is a new mode that was introduced in the new FL Studio. And what this mode works like stretch mode, but it has a new option called Formant. So let's try this out. So the Formant is a very interesting option you can use to change how your samples sound. So we'll go deeper into this time stretching mode in the next video when we take a look at sampling in the playlist. So yeah guys, that will be all for this video. We've been able to change this drum loop from this to this. So this is how powerful the sampler can be. So I'll see you in the next video where we take a look at sampling in the playlist. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you learned something from this. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you have any questions about this, leave them in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next video, guys. Peace.